All right, hello everyone. My name is Trey Vance and I'm going to be your presenter today. Today we are going to have a conversation around how government agencies are modernizing, both using Red Hat and AWS. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And today, as we go through this talk, we're going to really focus in on the government customers. Just to give you a quick background about myself, I have been at Red Hat for almost 2 years. Prior to those 2 years at Red Hat where I lead public sector, I spent 3 years at AWS. So I know a little bit about the cloud and a little bit about how we go to market together and how we're solving problems for customers. So what are some of the government trends? We can start obviously with the biggest trend, the global pandemic. It is something that has affected government work. So when I think about COVID beyond the obvious, the way that we were together today, so the way that we were able to come in to verify things like our status with vaccines. We also had people working from home, so a tremendous amount of work from home. And it changed a lot of government programs, so it accelerated by years the move into the cloud. It's accelerated that move because people were not able to access work environments. They weren't able to congregate together. And in that way, a lot of organizations pulled forward a lot of their plans and sometimes by necessity moved into the cloud. So tremendous capabilities for things like SaaS and platforms as service to be able to be moved into the cloud and for organizations to start using those as opposed to the traditional models on premise. Another thing that we've seen organizations to start to adhere to the OMB guidance for what is now known as Cloud Smart. Originally that was Cloud Forward, or Cloud First, but actually now the OMB has had almost a decade of using the cloud to be able to refine those practices and to even create centers of excellence and to create a community of practice around moving into the cloud, around governance in the cloud, governance and security at scale in the cloud, and providing all that visibility. Organizations have also wanted to pursue accreditations that say that they have an understanding of what the continuous monitoring, the continuous requirements are, and so organizations have moved to things like FedRAMP. FedRAMP is a risk authorization program that is based in the GSA and has been a template for the way that government agencies have moved into the cloud using cloud service offerings. So third parties like ourselves are building managed cloud solutions that take advantage of FedRAMP and are able to provide a need for customers to be able to innovate a lot faster. So one of the ways that differentiates Red Hat is that we use the open source community. And so what I mean by that is that the open source community could be individuals, it could be communities based on particular practices, but the open source community is when people come together around a particular software, whether that's AI and ML, whether that's other forms of logging, security, service mesh, containers, or Linux. Those are all things that are part of the open source community. And we work with those communities. We support those communities by providing education, training, and funding to those communities. But we also work with those communities by creating enterprise-grade products based on those community projects. And so the way that that works for us is that we would work with those organizations and then we would contribute back. So it's one thing to use open source, it's another thing to contribute back. And that sounds like it's a altruistic thing, but it's actually a really good business model. Having an open source development cycle with an upstream first methodology means that when the open source community innovates, which it does often, we are the recipients of that as well as our customers. And we don't have to go then and backport all of those changes. We don't have to make changes to our products because we kept it to ourselves. When we embrace the community, it creates better software products. It has more eyes on it, it has more accountability, it has more visibility. And so we take that large ecosystem of millions of developers and hundreds of thousands of open source projects, and we turn that into enterprise-grade products. So we are community-powered. We're powered by the open source community, and we contribute back to that same open source community. And it makes for better software products. It makes for better government use. So the intent is that there are organizations that might leverage open source today, and they may leverage open source via Red Hat today, but they have a supported enterprise lifecycle for their products and their projects. So when you have a mission like the United States government does, that mission is reinforced by the use of open source technology. There's visibility into what it is that you're building, the tools that you're building it with, and you have confidence that over time, that those things will continue to be supported, that those APIs will be consistent, and that you'll be able to power even more change. Because broadly, organizations that are moving into the cloud fall into three camps. You have the cloud migrators. You have organizations that simply want to move out of a data center. Maybe they have to close a data center. Those organizations want to move to the cloud to avail the security and reliability of the cloud. But after you've been there for a while, you begin to become cloud forward, where you would refactor or reimagine or reinvent your applications. And then eventually you become fully cloud native. You move beyond the data center mindset, and you really do operate with a capacity on demand, pay-as-you-go model to be able to use the resources that are right for you. And that's very important for our government customers, because government customers are doing things with their own constituents and citizens in mind, and they want to make sure that they're not constrained by the resources of a data center, and they're not underutilizing resources that they've already committed to. So in that way, they're becoming a lot more efficient. And we help with that by providing visibility into the environment as they're doing that. So Red Hat has been working with government and open source before open source was really coined as a term. And we've done that by contributing to Linux and being a significant contributor there, to working with Kubernetes, being one of the top 5 contributors to the Kubernetes project. So we're working with those projects to make those projects better, which helps our customers to innovate even faster. One of the ways that we do that is through providing tangible security controls and processes. One of the things that I think about is that we work very closely with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. We work very closely with them to produce things like the Open SCAP, which is a compliance automation protocol, working with the FedRAMP PMO on their OSCAL, which is a compliance automation language, ways to articulate all of the NIST 853 controls. So the idea there is that we may operate inside of a cloud, but we can articulate which controls that we're adhering to provide data encryption at rest and at flight, and any of the other controls around authorizing users and provisioning logging, et cetera. So those are things that are very tangible, and they're also made with open code. One of the ways that we do that to build cloud native applications is through Openshift. So Openshift is our container application development platform, and that platform is helping customers to modernize. So whether that's using containers or using containers to replace existing applications, or using containers to supplement new missions. The Openshift platform is built with Red Hat Enterprise Linux at the core, and then it uses Kubernetes as the engine for orchestration and the automation of the container solutions. In addition to that, there's a number of other tooling that's built into Openshift, but it is a curated, opinionated, and enterprise-supported application platform. And that distinction is very important because it means that you could have a multi-year life cycle for your applications with support, with management. So that means that instead of reading the manual and figuring out how to do it yourself, you can actually do that in partnership with Red Hat. It takes a lot to become Openshift. So it's not just a collection of projects put together. It's actually something that is designed, tested, secured, and used at scale, along with an ecosystem of certified containers, certified operators, and that ecosystem allows us to expand beyond what simply we provide or what we provide when running on AWS, but to a wide variety of different software vendors who are helping to achieve the mission, whether that's database vendors, whether that's source control, or other tooling like code execution and dynamic code protection, et cetera. Like all of those are tools that are available in the OpenShift environment. It allows our customers to build new cloud native applications and move very quickly. So one statistic that stands out actually comes from the Lego company circa 1974. In 1974, they said that essentially you could have 6 Lego bricks, the 2x4 bricks, the standard bricks. If you use 6 bricks and you stack them together, how many combinations are possible with those 6 bricks? Well, the Lego Corporation in 1974 thought 105 million, and they were actually wrong. It's not 105 million, it's 915 million, because they thought in a linear fashion. Oh, if I stack the bricks to the highest height and then made all the combinations possible, there'd be 105 million, right? But if you didn't stack to the optimal height and you stack to varying heights, there's a lot more combinations that are possible. The open source community is that way as well. AWS services are that way as well. There's over 100,000 open source projects. There's over 170 AWS services. So what combinations could you make with enterprise trusted software and all those combinations of tooling? The possibilities are endless. So what we do is we help to refine all of those great options. We curate and make an opinionated architecture for OpenShift. So OpenShift has a release cycle. And inside of that release cycle, we are doing the common vulnerability exploits, the CVE mitigation. We're doing upgrades, we're doing updates. And as that stuff is upgraded, it's also continuing to work together as designed. It's continuing to work together at scale. And so we do that with tools that then can be extended to our government customers. We have something that we call the compliance operator. And the compliance operator allows our government customers to create policies that shift the responsibility for security to the left. It makes security something that's done earlier and at every stage. We can create those policies to define things based on industry standards and controls like STIGs or CIS benchmarks. You can use guidance from NIST and other organizations to implement security in your environment. We help with ATO acceleration. We help with that because ATOs are largely audit driven. We help by providing the visibility and documentation into your environment by using things like configuration tooling and audit tooling, such as our OpenSCAP, which is a compliance automation protocol, or using a compliance automation language like OSCAL that was created by NIST to be able to accelerate the proof of documentation inside of a FedRAMP environment. We also adhere to a lot of government standards. We work with those same bodies to create STIGs, which are configuration guides used by the DoD. We also adhere to things like common criteria, and we have FIPS validated cryptographic libraries and modules. And so what that means is that we actually go to the NIST laboratories and have our solutions, software solutions, tested. This allows our government customers in every branch of the military to create their own software factories based on open source and enterprise open source. Those are things that drive the ability to have full transparency, to have a second set of eyes or a third set of eyes on these big challenges. And it helps with things like the executive order on cybersecurity. It helps to adhere to those things and to move fast. We're not doing it alone. Our customers are in a journey, whether they're using a self-managed solution like OpenShift Container Platform, or if they're using some form of managed service running on AWS. We have two managed services that run on AWS. We have a managed service that's fully managed and supported by Red Hat, and we have one that has a joint management and support with Red Hat and AWS. So we call those things OpenShift Container Platform. That's our self-managed. That's something that a customer could run themselves, whether that's at the edge, on-prem, or in AWS. We have a managed service that is operated by Red Hat and transacted by Red Hat in AWS. And then we have one that is jointly supported. So there's a variety of tools to meet the customer where they are. And that's important in the customer's cloud adoption journey to be able to meet them where they are. So what makes our solution on AWS different, particularly the Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS? That service is actually integrated into the AWS console. So that means that when I go into console.amazon.com, that shows me the Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS. It actually sits in the container category. So you can see it alongside AWS services such as ECS and EKS. And ROSA is that fully managed, backed by Red Hat SRE, capable of getting support and escalation. It's that full turnkey solution that sits in the AWS console. It's on the AWS bill. So you have one transaction source, right? You do everything through AWS, and you're able to move farther and faster without doing separate procurement. You have joint support. And I actually think this is one of the most important things, especially when you combine that with things like certified containers and operators. So a certified container is one that Red Hat will work with either an ISV vendor or we built ourselves to be able to understand that it works at scale, it works securely, and it's working as designed with a lot of other solutions in the mix. So it's a curated form. An operator is something that creates automation around running containers and sets of applications, stateful applications. And so we have certified versions of those as well. So now when you combine the security and reliability of AWS, you combine the managed cloud offering of ROSA and that certified ecosystem of containers and operators, you're able to build very quickly. You're able to build with confidence. And those are all the things that are very important to our government customers because they want to be able to iterate and they want to be able to use Git-based operations. They want to be able to use immutable architectures, and those are all things that are driven inside of ROSA. And then, very importantly, we're integrated with the 170 plus AWS services. So again, using the Lego analogy, the possibilities of this are endless. And that's the way it should be. You want to be able to move fast. You want to be able to consume cloud services. You want to be able to move from on-prem into the cloud and be able to bring your developers, bring your operations teams with you and provide them a path to be more cloud native. So again, we're not doing it alone. How do we get started? Since this is in AWS console, it's something that you can try capacity on demand, pay as you go. So you can actually go into the console, enable OpenShift, and begin to experiment with it. We also have an entire workshop series that you can be involved in the workshop series. And you could also work with our seller teams and professional services and consulting services, depending on how much of a moderate or high touch you would want for your environment. So lots of ways to get started. One of the most important things, and I've heard it said in other ways, but I think LeVar Burton actually says it the best. You don't have to take my word for it. We actually have relationships with the US Navy in their Compiled to Combat 24 program. We have relationships with the state of Michigan that's modernizing their IT infrastructure using OpenShift. We have relationships with the Department of Energy and Lockheed and Raytheon and a number of other partners that have been successful using Red Hat technologies to solve problems for government customers. So I would invite you to look at the success stories for government. We have a specific link here that's going to be shared in the slides. And with that, we're going to wrap. Please remember to do your surveys. And I thank you for your time. I'll take the questions offline.